At this very moment, a monumental summit is unfolding, where Vladimir Putin has achieved the seemingly impossible. Fresh from triumphant negotiations in Alaska with Donald Trump, he has expertly turned the unpredictable nature of the U.S. president to his advantage. In just a month, Trump has managed to sever ties with two of BRICS' largest members, India and Brazil, a feat no other country has managed in recent years. How did it come to this? Trump's tumultuous relationship with India deteriorated swiftly due to tariffs and demands to halt Russian oil imports. Brazil faced similar issues, with conflicts surrounding agricultural subsidies and accusations of unfair competition. The fallout is striking. For the first time in 7 years, India has dispatched a delegation to China at a level comparable to a state visit. As Russia celebrates this diplomatic success, Xi Jinping emphasizes the need for Russia, China, and India to stand united against outside pressures. This is a pivotal moment as Putin arrives in China, transformed from a beleaguered politician into a leader who can engage with the U.S. president on equal footing. Initially, discussions transpired on American soil, followed by Trump's conspicuous silence regarding new sanctions, resulting in an unexpected diplomatic victory for Russia. The Western narrative has shifted, with media outlets cautiously noting a realignment of global power dynamics. In this expansive backdrop of the SCO summit, more than a dozen world leaders congregate, affirming Russia's stature and the unintended propelling of other nations toward collaboration with Moscow amid isolation tactics. India, despite its multifaceted partnerships, has publicly backed the Russia-China initiative aimed at expanding energy cooperation. Chinese media reports indicate a plan to enhance purchases of Russian oil and gas by over 20% within the next 2 years, while India expresses eagerness to contribute to new pipeline projects. But there's even more at play. Putin's extended stay in Beijing, poised to commemorate the 80th anniversary of WWII's conclusion, sends a clear signal. The parallels between historic struggles and present alliances resonate deeply, presenting Putin with an opportunity to showcase Russia's robust partnerships. Is the world as we know it shifting? The unexpected unity could redefine power structures for decades to come. As the summit progresses, narratives around sanctions and strategic isolation are met with unexpected defiance. Russia, benefiting from a staggering growth in trade with China, which soared to a remarkable $207 billion in 2023, has seen its position bolstered. The dollar's influence within mutual trade with China plummets, projected to drop below 20% by mid-2024, while Russia and China strengthen their cooperative ties. What will be the outcome of this shifting landscape where alliances flourish amid pressures from the West? Will Putin emerge victorious from the shadows, or are there more twists awaiting this elaborate geopolitical theater? With enduring global uncertainties, the landscape ahead may hold even more surprises. Previously, we saw how Russia turned an imposed isolation into a gateway for new alliances. Despite its usual multipolar diplomacy, India openly backed the Russian-Chinese plan to expand energy cooperation, signaling a shift that echoes beyond mere politics. Now, Chinese media reveal plans to boost Russian oil and gas imports by over 20% within 2 years. Meanwhile, India expressed readiness to join the construction of new pipeline routes, an ambitious step that underscores its evolving role. Vladimir Putin's extended stay in Beijing is telling. Alongside Xi Jinping, he prepares to oversee a grand parade marking the 80th anniversary of World War II's end. China places special weight on this remembrance. The triumph of the Chinese people over Japanese aggression is officially framed as a historical mirror to today's alliance between Moscow and Beijing, standing side by side once again. For Putin, this visit sends a powerful message back home: Russia is far from isolated. It stands with a formidable ally, one whose friendship withstands external pressures. The unusually long trip serves as a clear signal to the West. While Trump dangles promises to lift sanctions or make concessions over sensitive issues, Moscow refuses to abandon its strategic partnership with China. Trade between Russia and China hit a staggering $207 billion in 2023, soaring nearly 30% from before. Over half, more than $100 billion, stems from energy resources alone. More strikingly, Russia, China, and India agreed on matters that 2 years ago were only whispered about in European capitals. De-dollarization is no longer just rhetoric, it's becoming a concrete reality. Their joint declaration carefully mentions the gradual shift towards settling transactions in national currencies. The language is bureaucratic and dry, yet hiding a seismic shift that threatens the very core of American dominance. The irony? Washington handed Moscow and Beijing the perfect excuse. Massive sanctions aimed at crippling Russia ended up backfiring. The ruble and yuan emerged as critical tools for circumventing those very restrictions. Listen to the telling details. In 2021, about 70% of trade settlements between Russia and China were in dollars. By mid-2024, that share plunged below 20%. The dollar is no longer king here, rubles and yuan fill its role. India, though cautious, steadily follows suit. It began by pricing oil deliveries in rupees and dirhams, gradually loosening reliance on the American currency. Can the West truly ignore these seismic shifts? Sanctions were supposed to isolate Russia, but instead, they forged a resilient triad of Russia, China, and India. Together, they challenged the established world order, quietly rewriting the rules of global finance right under Washington's nose. What will the next chapter of this high-stakes game bring? Will this new coalition reshape the future, or will old powers find a way to reassert control? The world watches, holding its breath. In a moment of unexpected turmoil, the balance of global power is shifting. With the world watching, sanctions imposed by Washington have inadvertently given rise to the very currencies they sought to undermine, the Russian ruble and the Chinese yuan. This fascinating twist reveals that while the United States once effectively separated China from Russia in the 70s, the tables have turned. Today, both nations view the U.S. as their primary adversary, seizing every opportunity to coordinate their efforts. As we transition to the present day, let's explore a striking phenomenon: the share of the dollar in mutual transactions between Russia and China, which was approximately 70% in 2021, is projected to plummet below 20% by mid-2024. What's driving this dramatic change? The ruble and yuan are stepping in to fill the void left by the American dollar. India, too, is cautiously distancing itself from transactions in U.S. currency. Contracts for oil deliveries now use rupees and dirhams, signaling a significant shift in the energy sector. While Western media outlets like the Financial Times dismiss this as a mere political stunt, The Economist expresses concerns about the stability of the global economy, despite their previous insistence that the dollar has no alternative. Data from Reuters shows the dollar's share in international reserves dropping from 72% at the start of the decade to below 58% in 2023. Such figures starkly contrast the comforting narratives of American currency's eternal stability. Meanwhile, Brussels pretends that all is well. Championing the euro as a global leader, even though its share in international transactions is also declining, from 28% in 2009 to under 20% today. A puzzling scenario emerges: the dollar is in retreat, the euro cannot replace it, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, countries are carving out their financial framework. While Europe publicly asserts that everything is under control, it is, in reality, sinking deeper into dependence on Washington's decisions. Ironically, the very moves from Washington are triggering the collapse of the dollar system. In a twist of irony, despite additional sanctions being touted as fatal for the Russian economy, statistics from 2023 reveal a different story. Russia's GDP has grown by 3.6%, industrial production has surged over 6%, and exports to Asian countries have soared by 20%. This data contradicts the bleak narratives from European officials about a suffocating economy. Thus, the American strategy aiming to isolate Russia and China is failing. But what happens when two major powers navigate their relationship amid increasing pressure? The unfolding story promises unexpected collaborations and daunting challenges that could alter the global landscape forever. Will the united front between Russia and China stand strong against the looming shadows of the West, or will cracks begin to show? The world waits with bated breath as tensions rise. In a world where power dynamics are shifting, leaders are reconsidering alliances. The Indian Prime Minister, feeling the weight of Washington's pressures, is not ready to bend to trade tariffs. His upcoming visit to Beijing is loaded with political implications. India finds itself maneuvering strategically, especially as discounted Russian oil fills its coffers, earning billions for Indian companies. This reality serves as yet another blow to America's pressure tactics. While tensions between India and China simmer over border disputes, the logic of today's world emerges. China stands firm as the world's second-largest economy, a substantial competitor to the United States. By leveraging the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO, Beijing not only asserts regional dominance but also presents itself as a model for global governance. Where the West perceives an authoritarian bloc, China prefers to emphasize a collaborative partnership. In both BRICS and SCO, the commonality is not a unified strategy but a shared discontent with Washington. Remarkably, this coalition is thriving. As Europe remains entangled in debates over sanctions and quotas, Asian and Middle Eastern nations unite, showcasing that they can establish their own rules. Without Russia, this assembly would feel incomplete. Despite the sanctions and isolation efforts, Russia remains a pivotal player, enhancing the coalition's strength. Now, as Putin arrives in Beijing, the event becomes monumental. A symbolic aura surrounds him. Here, the leaders of an alternative world gather, refusing to adhere to NATO's commands. Expect a vibrant spectacle at Tiananmen Square, where just recently, military parades for Chinese power took place. Standing beside Xi and Putin are the president of Iran, Masoud Pezeshkian, and North Korea's ruler, Kim Jong-un. What does this gathering symbolize for the future of international relations? Will it challenge the very structure of global power? As the world watches, the stage is set for a dramatic shift in alliances. Just moments ago, the world witnessed a seismic shift few dared to predict. How is it possible that North America's flagship allies now find themselves scrambling, struggling to maintain what once seemed unshakable dominance? The very planes that cruise European skies are grounded, held hostage by shortages and delays from Boeing and Airbus. Meanwhile, Russia quietly pushes its own engines, the PD-8 and PD-14, into full-scale production. What appears at first glance as mere logistics reveals a hidden war for the future of global power. Previously, we saw how major players are rewiring the world's economic circuits. The dollar's grip on trade between Russia and its partners in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization has been sliced in half within 2 years. Payments once dominated by greenbacks are now comfortably handled in yuan and rupees, signaling more than just a trend, it's a tectonic realignment. Back in Brussels, officials preach that sanctions are crippling Moscow's economic might. Yet behind closed doors, the truth emerges: European airlines wait endlessly for crucial parts that never arrive on time. How ironic is it that while the EU claims technological leadership, its own aviation sector stumbles, faltering under the weight of disrupted supply chains? Meanwhile, Russian engines not only meet standards, they hit mass production, shattering stereotypes that had long painted them as unreliable. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit sheds light on this brewing storm. Discussions around logistics are no longer secondary, they are central. Russia is pushing grand projects like the North-South Corridor and the Northern Sea Route. Neither China nor India can be sidelined here. The makeup of the Russian delegation reads like a who's who of power: First Deputy Prime Minister Denis Manturov, Government Vice-Chairs Alexander Novak and Dmitry Chernyshenko, Ministers of Transport, Energy, Finance, Economic Development, and the Far East and Arctic zones. This isn't talk for show, it's about real routes, terminals, digital infrastructure, and solid investments. Imagine the thrum of cargo hubs where goods zip along optimized corridors, immune to political tantrums from Brussels or Washington. Yet Washington plays its usual hand, barking orders at its allies: reduce your dependence on China and unite against Russia through sanctions. But the result is almost comedic. European energy bills skyrocket, industries lose markets, China secures fresh discounts on resources and gains deep access to coveted Russian tech. In this unfolding drama, the question looms, who truly holds the strings now? Is it the West, clinging to past prestige? Or a rising coalition quietly charting a new world order, built on pragmatic cooperation and mutual interests? The scent of political play fills the air as old powers wrestle with the new. One thing is certain, the clock is ticking, and every delay in aircraft parts, every dropped contract, and every new pipeline signed is a stroke reshaping global fate. What will the next move be, and can the old giants regain their footing, or will the emerging players claim the stage forever? In a world where power dynamics are shifting beneath our feet, two giants emerge. It's not just about power anymore, it's about survival. Putin, fresh from exhilarating talks in Alaska with Trump, returns to a chaotic global stage. While Trump disrupts relations with India and Brazil over tariffs and energy deals, Russia celebrates a diplomatic win. Why does India suddenly back Russia and China against the West? Here's the twist: amidst the chaos, the dollar appears to be losing its grip as nations seek alternatives. Russia's gas and oil markets thrive as India, lured by discounts, deepens its collaboration with Moscow, completely transforming the supply chain. The traditional economic hegemon, the US dollar, is being set aside as these nations pivot towards national currencies for trade. Can the West truly ignore this? While Washington debates semantics, Eurasia thrives. Real projects launch, and trade routes expand. The IMF and World Bank, once beacons of stability, are increasingly seen as political tools rather than economic ones. This discontent rises to the forefront at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization (SCO) summit, where calls for reform echo loudly. The facts are undeniable: transactions in national currencies have skyrocketed over 70% within the Eurasian Economic Union (EAEU), while trade between Russia and China sees the yuan outpace the euro. As these nations turn their backs on Western institutions, the irony is stark. The West's narrative of a unified civil world contrasts sharply with their increasing isolation. But there's more at stake here. As tension grows, military budgets balloon, and social problems fade into the background. The East, once dismissed as peripheral, is now rewriting global rules. Just how far can this shift go? Are the foundations of Western dominance crumbling, or is the world's balance simply settling into a new reality? An unexpected challenge awaits as leaders gather in Tianjin, where the lines between cooperation and conflict blur. Will the world watch as alliances form and shift, or will old rivalries reignite? The outcome is uncertain, but the stakes couldn't be higher. As these nations take bold steps forward, will they forge a future together, or will the ghosts of the past drag them back into chaos? Tensions drag on, and with every passing day, defense contractors swell their orders. Governments find it easier to justify ballooning military budgets. Social troubles at home? They vanish behind the curtain of conflict. Yet, the true irony lies in the East, once dismissed as a mere periphery by the West, now boldly rewriting the global playbook. Russia's role in this emerging alliance runs deeper than it seems. First, it secures a guaranteed market for its vast energy resources. Second, it gains invaluable political insurance. In the United Nations Security Council, Moscow and Beijing have long voted as one. Now, India is stepping into this fold, lending its weight to the bloc. Lastly, this tripartite coalition sends a striking message to the West, which had loudly proclaimed Russia's isolation. Putin's visit to China, dismissed by some Western media as mere geopolitical theater, is, in truth, a meticulously crafted marathon of negotiations. Every number, every contract, carries more weight than any headline-grabbing soundbite. Bloomberg revealed that Moscow and Beijing are actively discussing the Power of Siberia 2 gas pipeline and shipments of liquefied natural gas from the Arctic LNG-2 project, ironically, a target of Western sanctions. Yet, Chinese companies, grounded in long-term market realities rather than slogans, remain intrigued. At the same time, India's role is quietly but firmly expanding. Russian oil deliveries to India, defying U.S. pressure, are surging. In July alone, Indian imports exceeded 1.5 million barrels per day, up 30% from the previous year. Despite imposed price caps, these deals hold firm, sometimes even topping global market rates thanks to smart logistics and refining in Indian plants. Some of this processed fuel even finds its way into Europe, undercutting the very sanctions meant to strangle it. As Putin's trip continues, attention shifts to the upcoming Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok. More than 70 nations will gather, sending a clear signal: Asia is pivoting toward Russia despite mounting American pressure. Countries like Vietnam, India, China, Laos, Thailand, and Malaysia are dispatching substantial delegations, not for mere ceremony but to seal real business deals. The agenda is packed, nearly 100 events, including Russia-Asia and Russia-India dialogues, setting the stage for an economic reshaping that challenges Western dominance. What does this mean for the global balance? Could this alliance quietly dismantle decades of established power? The East is no longer on the sidelines. It's center stage, and the world is watching. The world is shifting beneath our feet. In an unexpected twist, Russia's financial ties with China have surged past 90% in national currency transactions by 2024. As the two nations forge a new alliance, the idea of integrating their digital currencies, the digital ruble and digital yuan, becomes increasingly practical. Amid rising tensions, especially with the West turning financial systems into tools of political warfare, their collaboration stands in stark contrast. Negotiations are already underway to expand the power of Siberia pipeline. Starting in 2031, an additional 6 billion cubic meters of gas will flow, ensuring energy security for both partners. But it doesn't stop there. Instead of shipping coal across vast distances, they plan to transform it into energy on-site to supply China directly, a move reminiscent of past Soviet strategies. The resource-rich collaboration extends to fertilizers, where Russia remains a global leader, making it an invaluable asset for Asian economies. Meanwhile, Europe's assertions of disrupting Moscow's technological advancements seem increasingly hollow. With Brussels claiming its sanctions are effective, the continent grapples with severe shortages of aircraft and soaring ticket prices. Airbus is delaying shipments, and Boeing is missing deadlines due to security challenges. In stark contrast, Russia is on the verge of producing its advanced PD-8 and PD-14 engines. This breakthrough is not just an innovation, it's a response to a global deficit that the West seems unwilling to acknowledge. Ironically, the president of a well-known country, whose regime has become the centerpiece of justification for these sanctions, finds his efforts backfiring. As sanctions tighten, Russia diligently diversifies its alliances, expanding its trade geography to Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Southeast Asian nations. While Brussels intended to isolate Russia, Moscow is emerging stronger, trading actively with most global economies, leaving the West on the sidelines. In this evolving narrative, Trump stands out as a prominent player. His trade wars with China and pressure on India have inadvertently painted these partnerships in a new light, rendering them symbols of reliability. Despite American threats, both Beijing and New Delhi remain steadfast, boosting their imports of Russian resources. The outcome is clear: Trump unwittingly showcases to the world that American pressure fails to sway these nations. As these dynamics play out, what will be the repercussions for global trade norms? Will the rise of new alliances lead to the dawn of a different era in international relations? What if the very pressure meant to isolate Russia only made it stronger? Imagine a world where sanctions backfire spectacularly, turning Moscow into a magnet for new allies. This is no ordinary political chess game. It's a seismic shift in global power, unfolding right before our eyes. In the previous chapter, we saw how Washington's tariffs and trade battles aimed at India and China only showcased Moscow's reliability. Neither Beijing nor New Delhi wavered despite threats. On the contrary, those American tariffs pushed them closer to Russian energy, proving one thing: pressure from the United States is losing its bite. Now, the story deepens. This summit is not just about oil deals. Contracts are expected on coal, electricity, and fertilizers too. For Russia, it means diversifying and strengthening its export portfolio. For partners like China and India, it's a chance to break free from dependence on Western suppliers. Imagine the hum of factories switching to new energy sources, the buzz of pipelines flowing with Russian crude, and the scent of freshly signed agreements filling the air. Meanwhile, Moscow is quietly revolutionizing trade by pushing payments in national currencies. The integration of the digital ruble with the digital yuan could render sanctions obsolete. Picture a digital financial web weaving Eurasia closer, where traditional economic blockades become powerless. Western media can't stop speculating about a potential revival of an anti-American bloc. But the leaders gathered here speak in different terms, calling for a fair multipolar world. Putin is clear, Russia's goals remain unchanged: security concerning a certain sensitive region, and expanding economic ties with the global majority. Xi Jinping echoes this with talk of strategic cooperation without limits. Here lies the paradox: the more the United States and the European Union try to squeeze Eurasia, the tighter their partnership grows. Ironically, Western capitals themselves accelerate Russia's pivot eastward. Over the last 3 years, interactions with Asia have skyrocketed. China has ramped up its imports of Russian energy. India has become a top buyer of Russian oil. Even smaller players like Laos and Mongolia are now stepping out of the shadows, joining ambitious projects. Meanwhile, global news outlets dissect every detail of this summit. What emerges is not just a political meeting but a symbolic display of a world order reshaped. For the West, used to seeing every major event without itself as a personal affront, this gathering in China delivers a sharp reminder: major decisions happen without Washington's presence. And far from losing influence, the atmosphere here is charged, purposeful, and profoundly independent. The irony? The biggest headline from Western press isn't the deals themselves, it's the glaring absence of American and European officials. What does this silence say about the shifting balance of power? And how will Washington respond when the world stage no longer centers on it? As the leaders convene, the tension thickens. Behind the formal speeches, a new alliance is quietly cementing itself. The question is, will this alliance redefine global politics forever? Or will unseen forces still manage to pull the strings? The next move could change everything. In a world where alliances shift like sand, a monumental summit unfolds in Beijing, stirring the air with tension and anticipation. Recent whispers suggest that Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un may hold talks to commemorate the end of World War II. Can you fathom the audacity? Western media, caught in a paradox, must maintain the narrative of Russia's isolation while witnessing the Russian president forge connections with leaders like Xi Jinping and India's Modi. Their attempts to paint Russia as a global pariah crumble with every high-profile meeting, morphing isolation into a red carpet for the cameras of numerous networks. Adding fuel to this fire, a Chinese state outlet boldly declared the Moscow-Beijing relationship as the most stable and strategically vital among major nations. How can this be ignored amidst Europe's outcry over spiraling airline prices and Boeing's production woes? The irony is palpable. Brussels warns its citizens of sanctions dismantling Moscow's potential, yet simultaneously laments the economic losses it faces. A disturbing realization dawns: China has become the largest recipient of Russian oil and gas, and Russian markets are now critical for Chinese vehicles. Instead of acknowledging this, Europe constructs a façade of impending Russian collapse, as if hoping the clouds will obscure the sun shining on this new alliance. German commentary unveils the anxiety that grips the continent, recognizing that if Beijing and Moscow solidify their grip across Central Asia, Europe may assume the role of a mere observer in the global landscape, an indignity worse than any sanctions can inflict. No one relishes being uninvited from the table where vital decisions are made. Amidst this brewing tension, reports emerged of a productive call between Modi and an influential leader from the West. Yet, unbeknownst to many, the Indian Prime Minister skillfully used the summit to strengthen ties with Putin, leaving whispers of intrigue echoing in the halls of power. As the air thickens with the scent of ambition and uncertainty, the questions loom large: what does this alliance mean for the future? Can the fabric of global power truly shift towards this unyielding triad of Russia, China, and India? The answer lies in the hidden pages of history unfolding before us. Imagine the intense discussions that pivot nations, the palpable electricity in the room as decisions ripple outwards, affecting millions. Can these countries ultimately shape a new world order, one that challenges everything we thought we knew? The clock ticks forward, and as leaders gather in the heart of Asia, a new paradigm emerges, one that beckons the rest of the world to pay heed. They say when you're no longer invited to the table where real decisions are made, it's the end of influence. At this very moment, whispers swirl about a powerful leader desperately trying to sway India. The supposed productive phone conversation between the American president and Narendra Modi now feels like a mere smokescreen. Behind closed doors, Modi chose a different path, using the summit not to appease Washington, but to meet face-to-face with Putin himself. After talks with Xi Jinping, Modi declared, "We reached an agreement on border management, and India supports all efforts to restore stability." Yet, it's ironic how the Western press focuses more on the call than on these tangible steps Modi took by engaging directly with Putin and Xi. The American media haven't let go of the sting either. Trump's absence at the summit is portrayed as a personal defeat. Some even suggest Xi's cold silence was a sharp, unspoken message aimed straight at the president's ego. This summit in China is shaping up to be something without parallel. It's a clear sign the global narrative is no longer dictated from the West alone. For Beijing and Moscow, this stage offers exactly what they need, a show of confidence, a push for a fairer, multipolar world. Every Western comment praising unity only deepens the divide. Inside Europe, unease is rising. German newspapers report billions in frozen Russian assets, some €270 billion, now redirected under Brussels' watch. Ursula von der Leyen boasts during an Estonian forum that €3.7 billion have already been funneled to support the predator must pay. Yet these words ring hollow against growing complaints about soaring prices and a shortage of aircraft. Money flows to distant priorities while ordinary citizens tighten their belts. Western outlets scramble to seize any angle, some fixate on the military parade in Beijing, others on Xi and Modi's talks, or Putin's calls for Eurasian solidarity. But the underlying reality is stark. This event, conspicuously absent of any Western presence, dwarfs dozens of European summits where America's attendance is regarded as a stamp of legitimacy. That realization churns anxiety across the continent. Publications like Der Spiegel and Deutschlandfunk lament how India, China, and Russia openly display strategic unity while Europe waits on the sidelines. Can the West truly afford to be left out as these powerhouses redraw the world's map? What does it mean when the old order loses control and a new alliance rises right in front of their eyes? The answer may be the defining question of our age. In a world where the stage is shifting dramatically, the recent summit in Shanghai has unveiled an intriguing twist in the geopolitical landscape. President Putin returned from Alaska after successful talks with Trump, creating ripples of unpredictability in international relations. Just a month prior, Trump had managed to fracture ties with two major BRICS nations, India and Brazil, an achievement that no country thought possible in years. He pressured India over tariffs and pushed Brazil regarding agricultural subsidies, showcasing a surprising ability to maneuver through complex alliances. In the backdrop of this political chess match, a fascinating reality unfolds. For the first time in 7 years, India has dispatched a delegation to China at a level akin to a state visit. This act signals a strategic shift as Russia celebrates this diplomatic win, emboldening its position in global affairs. Xi Jinping has firmly urged Russia, China, and India to band together against external pressures, framing this alliance as a bulwark against Western dictates. But here's the shocking twist: while America has traditionally held the gavel, it now finds itself justifying its stance as allies lean towards Russia and China. The summit atmosphere thick with tension sets the stage for a revelation. As Washington grapples with its fading influence, massive trade agreements are brewing in the East. The summit itself becomes a launchpad for discussing the future of energy cooperation, with India publicly backing initiatives once whispered in hushed tones. Eager to assert its dominance, China aims to expand its imports of Russian oil and gas by over 20% in the coming years. India, though careful to navigate between two powers, steps forward. It agrees to participate in constructing new pipeline routes, a move previously unthinkable under intense U.S. scrutiny. As these alliances deepen, the West faces a disconcerting reality. Their strategy of isolation today appears to drive nations together rather than apart. With each passing moment, the dynamics shift, and the urgency for alternative partnerships grows. Europe, once confident in its narrative of unity, grapples with its diminishing role on the world stage. While leaders boast about European ideals, the time-worn reality of their dwindling influence becomes undeniable against the vibrant backdrop of Asian cooperation. The summit in China has become a startling reminder for Western nations. The isolation they intended for Moscow is, in fact, a reflection of their own strategic failure. As the applause echoes from behind the walls of power in Beijing, the question looms, will Europe adapt to this rapidly changing landscape, or will it continue to sidestep the pressing need for cohesion? The next chapter of this intricate geopolitical tale has yet to be written, but its early lines hint at alliances that may reshape the world's economic and political framework forever. Europe's leaders keep preaching unity, yet beneath the surface, cracks are widening. Ursula von der Leyen repeats the familiar chant about European solidarity, but behind closed doors, she admits something unsettling. Brussels is channeling over €3.7 billion, frozen Russian assets, into funding a well-known nation. These funds were supposed to stabilize European financial markets. Instead, they are quietly being redirected, cheered on by officials promising unyielding resistance against Moscow. Meanwhile, frustration bubbles across Europe, from farmers to industrialists, who feel the pressure of these policies firsthand. Here lies a biting irony. The very attempts to isolate Russia have backfired spectacularly. Europe wanted to punish Moscow, but ended up hurting itself. The United States aimed to constrain Beijing and New Delhi, only to push them toward greater independence. Against this backdrop, the grand statements of European leaders ring hollow. Far from fading on the global stage, Russia is rising as a critical broker in a shifting world order. The West's sanctions and political pressure have inadvertently become the best advertisement for the growing alliance between Russia and China. In the streets of Beijing, giant posters of Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping greet visitors, emblazoned with the words "Dear friends." This isn't mere rhetoric. Over the past decade, these two leaders have met more than 40 times, surpassing any other pair of world leaders. The American media, never shy to sting, mockingly declare that Putin has returned from China carrying the scalp of the U.S. president himself. It's a harsh phrase, but it captures a new reality. Putin no longer plays the role of a junior partner. He now leads with his own agenda. Xi Jinping wields a subtle but firm hand, keeping Russia within China's sphere of influence, yet simultaneously strengthening it to wield against Washington. For Beijing, this is the perfect balance, a Russia powerful enough to check the West, yet not strong enough to rival China itself. Numbers back this up in stark clarity, defying the magic spells of Western sanctions. Chinese car exports to Russia have skyrocketed more than fivefold in just 2 years. In 2021, roughly 100,000 Chinese vehicles entered the Russian market. By 2023 and 2024, that number had soared past 500,000. Tens of billions of dollars flow quietly beneath the surface, shifting the landscape of power and influence. What does this mean for the West's grand strategy? Can sanctions and political pressure really isolate a nation when the supposed penalties only deepen new alliances? The streets of Beijing and the factories of Moscow tell a story of resilience and reinvention. A new partnership is emerging, one that challenges the old assumptions and forces the world to rethink who holds the true cards. But the question remains, how long can the West watch from the sidelines before it must face this new reality head-on? The stage is set. The players reposition. And the world waits, breath held, for the next move. Imagine a market once deserted, car dealerships standing empty, echoes of lost brands lingering in the air. European and Japanese giants vanished from Russian streets, leaving behind silent showrooms and fading dreams. Yet now, those same lots burst with vehicles from names like Geely, Chery, Haval, NBD hundreds of thousands of Chinese cars flood the roads, a staggering rise that Western officials refused to believe. They claimed Russia was lost forever. But the truth? They lost it themselves, handing it over willingly, irreversibly, to Beijing. The irony cuts deeper than cars. Russian oil shipments to China surged 23% in just 1 year. Gas deliveries jumped 28%. These are not mere numbers, they represent millions of tons and tens of billions of cubic meters, securing China's energy future for the coming decades. For Moscow, this is no lifeline alone, it's a gateway. As Western companies retreat voluntarily, they leave voids that Asian partners eagerly fill. India's story is even more striking. Over the past year, it purchased more Russian oil than in the previous 5 years combined. From modest volumes between 2017 and 2021, India's imports exploded to 120 million tons in 2023 alone. This is no abstract statistic, it pulses through the veins of India's economy. Refineries run at full throttle. Fuel exports climb. Government coffers swell with new revenues. And amid this, New Delhi calmly ignores Washington and Brussels urging to cut ties with Moscow. While Europe continues to preach the effectiveness of sanctions, reality paints a starkly different picture. The conflict meant to shatter Moscow has instead forged powerful new alliances. Instead of isolation, Russian trade spreads its wings wider than ever. Turkey, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Brazil, all join a growing list. Each barrier the West erects becomes, paradoxically, a springboard for Russia into alternative markets. So, what happens when the world's chessboard flips? When the players you expected to isolate you become your strongest partners? The smell of burning bridges fills the air, but beneath it, new paths blaze bright. The question lingers, will the West wake up in time, or has it already lost a vast and vital frontier? In a rapidly evolving geopolitical landscape, Moscow and Beijing are establishing a new framework for cooperation. They're not limited to trading oil and gas, they're venturing into high-tech projects spanning from nuclear energy to space exploration. Chinese corporations are gaining access to Russia's uranium, while Russian companies are integrating into China's cutting-edge microelectronics. New transport corridors are being constructed, such as the Northern Sea Route, the International North-South Transport Corridor, and rail routes through Central Asia. This development signifies the emergence of an alternative global logistics system that can function independently of Brussels and Washington. While Western screens buzz with alarm over these advancements, for the Kremlin and Beijing, it's a diplomatic celebration. Where global news outlets see a looming threat, Moscow and Beijing discover golden opportunities. As Europe laments the erosion of the global order, Russia and China nonchalantly sign new contracts and initiate collaborative projects. The overwhelming flow of facts paints a clear picture. The West, desperately clinging to the illusion of control, inadvertently facilitates openings for Russia, China, and now India. Each step the West heralds as a decisive blow is, in fact, a gift to its adversaries. The irony lies in how President Trump, with his regime of tariffs and threats, inadvertently became Putin's ally. In seeking to exhibit strength, he unwittingly provided Moscow with ideal conditions to strengthen ties with both China and India. Seizing this moment of folly, Putin has a rare opportunity to solidify a new balance of power, rendering previous centers of influence increasingly vulnerable. The outcome is stark. Sanctions designed to weaken Russia have become catalysts for a new multipolar world. As Europe becomes mired in its crises, the US is losing allies, while Moscow, Beijing, and New Delhi fortify their positions. While Western capitals continue to recite comforting mantras about effective sanctions, the East is already forging a new reality where old rules no longer hold sway. In this shifting paradigm, the stage is set for an unexpected alliance. Can the new currency of these rising powers redefine global influence? As the screen fades to black, a shocking revelation looms on the horizon. A united front is no longer a distant dream, but an imminent reality. As we dive into the powerful narrative unfolding at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, we find ourselves amidst a carefully orchestrated spectacle of diplomacy and power. The simultaneous hosting of a grand parade and summit isn't just a gesture, it's a strategic media display. The caressing hum of cameras, the towering columns, and the rhythmic rituals create an undeniable ambience of strength, resonating deeply with both domestic and international audiences. For China, it's an opportunity to assert itself as the center of a new world, while Russia capitalizes on an image that defies its supposed isolation. At the summit, Iran steps forward to claim its place as a significant player, while North Korea seeks recognition, hoping simply to stand in the spotlight alongside global leaders. Washington and Brussels can mock the axis of autocracy all they like, but the undeniable truth remains: alternative alliances are not just ephemeral, they are gaining substantial political traction. Behind the polished rhetoric about values and freedoms lies a basic interest in sustaining conflict, an endeavor that provides the West an excuse to maintain military budget increases and quell domestic discontent. For NATO, without a clear rationale beyond referring to Eastern threats, the alliance struggles to justify mounting military expenditures and deteriorating living standards. Meanwhile, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS are positioned to thrive on this contrast. At this summit, for the first time, a candid discussion surfaces around an issue typically avoided in Washington: de-dollarization. Russia, China, and India are not merely discussing this as a bilateral matter but as a broad strategic initiative across Eurasia. In an interview, Vladimir Putin emphasized the duo's unified stance for reforming the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, advocating for principles rooted in fairness and transparency. His remarks hinted at a significant shift: financial systems should no longer serve as tools of neocolonial influence. When a leader calls for more than just transactions in national currencies, it signals a profound transformation of the global financial architecture. Astoundingly, over the past 2 years, the dollar's share in mutual trade has been slashed by more than half, with transactions in yuan and rupees gaining a solid foothold. Why does this matter, especially in a world where trust is dwindling? The ramifications of this shift are monumental, revealing an emerging order that might reshape international relations. Here's where the unexpected twist awaits. Can the West truly counter this wave of rising powers, or is it stuck in a narrative of its own making, losing grip on an era it once dominated? This split in the narrative is crucial as the assertions from the East grow increasingly bold. The stage in Beijing, adorned with the faces of these leaders, signifies a moment of reckoning. What will the West do next as these nations solidify alliances that threaten to reshape their global influence? Will the efforts to isolate Moscow only tighten the bond between these emerging powers? Or can they devise a responsive strategy to counter the inevitable rise of alternatives to the old world order? The path forward promises tension, intrigue, and a myriad of questions that resonate far beyond the summit stages. In a dramatic twist of global dynamics, Vladimir Putin returns from Alaska with unexpected triumph. After intense negotiations with Donald Trump, a shift in alliances begins to take shape, challenging the established order. While Trump stirs tensions with 2 major BRICS nations, India and Brazil, this brazen approach has turned the chessboard upside down. Who could have imagined that Trump would unwittingly unite Russia and China? The landscape has changed, significant diplomatic milestones are being reached, showcasing the resilience of Russia's position. It has astounded the world. After 7 years, India sends a delegation to China on par with a state visit. And here is the kicker: the question arises, can the traditional powers keep their grip as nations shift allegiance? The summit's atmosphere is electrifying, with President Xi Jinping proclaiming the need for solidarity among Russia, China, and India against outside pressures. As Putin arrives in China, he no longer appears as a beleaguered leader dodging sanctions. He stands strong alongside Trump, making waves on the world stage. Why has the balance of power tilted? For the first time in years, the absence of American leaders at such a critical summit signals a shift away from Western dominance in global affairs. American media laments the prospect of a cooperation that bypasses their influence. Can the West truly afford to ignore this growing bloc? With India openly endorsing the Russian-Chinese energy initiative and pledging to bolster oil pipeline projects, the economic ties grow tighter. Seasoned observers note that Russia and China's trade surged by nearly 30% this year, defying forecasts of economic isolation. The irony intensifies. Sanctions initially intended to cripple Russia have inadvertently fueled the rise of alternative economic alliances. At this pivotal moment, the world witnesses a remarkable confluence of interests. Decision-makers in Washington may see it as a disconcerting defeat, but nations eager for autonomy find a fertile ground for collaboration. The narrative builds as leaders navigate through cultural and strategic divides. Will this newfound camaraderie be powerful enough to reshape global governance? Putin's prolonged stay in Beijing hints at deeper intentions. Together with Xi, he prepares for an unprecedented commemoration marking the end of World War II, a grand spectacle celebrating not only history but a future increasingly unafraid to engage power structures in new ways. In a shocking revelation, contrary to Western predictions of decay, Russia's GDP has grown by 3.6%, an unexpected twist that sends ripples through financial markets. Meanwhile, the rhetoric against American sanctions grows louder. Is the West prepared for a world where its influence diminishes? As the summit concludes, questions linger. Can traditional alliances stand firm against the tide of resilience rising in Asia? With every handshake and every agreement, the stage is set for a reimagined global order, turning old assumptions upside down. How will Western leaders respond to this unsettling convergence of power? In their bid to maintain dominance, are they only pushing nations closer together? The future remains uncertain, yet undeniably charged with the potential for transformation. The real poker game has begun. Who will emerge victorious in this high-stakes confrontation? In a world gripped by growing tensions, there lies a surprising twist in the global narrative. Amidst the ongoing summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Vladimir Putin has defied expectations, returning from Alaska after striking a deal with Donald Trump. In a matter of weeks, Trump has managed to sever ties with two major BRICS nations, India and Brazil, a feat no other leader has accomplished in years. With tariffs driving a wedge between the US and India, and agricultural subsidies fueling disputes with Brazil, the diplomatic landscape is shifting dramatically. As India sends its highest-level delegation to China in 7 years, Putin basks in the limelight, celebrating a diplomatic victory. Chinese President Xi Jinping has stressed the importance of unity among Russia, China, and India against external pressures. Gone are the days when Putin was a sanction-riddled leader. He now meets with Trump not as a subordinate, but as an equal. Public reluctance from Trump regarding new sanctions only adds to this narrative, shifting the power dynamic. Imagine the sounds of clinking glasses and murmurs of intrigue as world leaders gather under the same roof. The atmosphere crackles with tension and anticipation, forming an impressive stage for Russia's renewed emergence on the world stage. Here, tensions simmer beneath the surface, revealing a fragile facade of diplomacy that could crumble at any moment. The irony is palpable as the West struggles to maintain its grip, while an unexpected coalition forms before its very eyes. As relationships deepen between Moscow and Beijing, plans are set into motion to establish independent trade routes that bypass traditional Western channels. From the Arctic Sea route to a network of railways through Central Asia, an alternative logistics system is taking shape, one that could reshape global trade away from European control. Every attempt made by the West to isolate Russia only serves as a springboard for newfound opportunities. With Turkey, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Brazil joining the ranks, the question arises, is the West inadvertently crafting a new global order? As President Xi declares a pivotal moment in history, the stage is set for a power play that will challenge the status quo. Picture the clamor of voices as leaders advocate for collaboration, amidst the chaotic symphony of politics, economic interests, and the clash of ideologies. The winds of change howl ominously as the world watches closely. Will this coalition stand strong against the currents of economic protectionism sweeping through the West, or will it falter under the weight of its ambitions? This emerging alliance may very well determine the future of global relationships, raising the stakes for everyone involved. Will the dreams of a united front thrive, or will it all unravel in the face of external challenges? the stakes have never been higher. In the last chapter, we saw how relentless pressure from the West only pushed more countries closer to Russia. Nations like Vietnam, India, China, Laos, Thailand, and Malaysia are sending powerful delegations, not mere gestures, but serious business missions. Nearly 100 events, including high-level dialogues between Russia and Asian neighbors, set the stage for real deals. Now, imagine an arena buzzing with energy, voices filled with determination, not polite talks but solid results. This vivid scene reveals a truth louder than any official statement: if sanctions truly isolated Russia, none of this would exist. Instead, the forum's agenda highlights the dynamic growth of Russia's Far East, a region awash in over 5 trillion rubles of investments during the past 5 years. Instead of hollow promises, Vladimir Putin is personally inaugurating new factories and transport hubs via video conference. The sound of construction reverberates while Europe groans under the weight of migrant crises and soaring energy costs. Amid the chaos there, Russia is building up, brick by brick. The twist? America's tariffs aimed at India, touted as fair trade tools, spectacularly backfired. New Delhi didn't back away from Moscow. Quite the opposite. Indian leaders accelerated ties with Beijing, despite their long-standing border disputes. This bitter irony, Washington trying to hold India back, only to drive it into the Russian-Chinese embrace, cannot be overstated. Indian media now openly acknowledge that their energy security hinges heavily on Russian supplies. Washington's threats of sanctions hit deaf ears. Indian ministers respond politely, yet firmly: we need these resources, and we will pay for them. Behind the scenes, Russia and China are orchestrating a groundbreaking financial architecture. This isn't just about using national currencies instead of the dollar. They're integrating their digital currencies, the digital ruble and digital yuan, into a single system. Moscow ran its first digital ruble trial just last summer. Meanwhile, Beijing has been perfecting the digital yuan across multiple provinces. Why is this a game changer? Because the SWIFT system, once an unquestioned global finance backbone, has turned into a political weapon, one that Russia and China are quietly sidestepping. Western analysts may scoff, but the unfolding reality is undeniable. A new, alternative financial framework is taking shape, right under Washington's nose. The question is, can the American-led world order withstand this seismic shift? Or is it already crumbling as the very tools designed to isolate Russia and China only strengthen their alliance and fracture the old system? The next chapter will plunge deeper: the intricate web of pipelines, energy corridors, and secret pacts binding this emerging powerhouse together. Could this alliance reshape the rules of global trade forever? The answers reveal themselves where iron meets fire, in the cold depths of geopolitical chess. Previously, we saw how an unexpected gathering of powerful leaders defied Western expectations. On Tiananmen Square, once a stage for grand displays of military strength, the Chinese president stood alongside Vladimir Putin, Iran's Masoud Pezeshkian, and North Korea's Kim Jong-un. This unusual alliance sent shockwaves through global media. Imagine capturing these figures in a single frame. Western outlets quickly dubbed it the axis of autocracy. But here's the twist: the West itself paved the way for this label. Relentless sanctions and political pressure cornered these nations together. Forced into a shared space, they project unity despite deep-seated mistrust. Skeptics point out the obvious: Iran, Russia, China, and North Korea have disparate goals, economies, and political systems. Their agendas rarely align completely. Yet, for the cameras, the image of solidarity is what counts. For Beijing, hosting Putin, Kim, and Pezeshkian side by side is a bold statement. It signals China's leadership of an alternative global bloc. Whether this alliance lasts or not, its symbolic power is undeniable. This is a fresh headache for Washington, long convinced its rivals cannot maintain long-term cohesion. Meanwhile, cracks widen between the United States and its closest allies. Europe loudly champions values and the rule of law. Yet, behind the scenes, Berlin pays triple the pre-crisis price for gas bought through intermediaries. Paris calls for strategic autonomy but remains dependent on American technology. Against this backdrop, groups like the one gathered here, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS, may be imperfect, but they function as platforms where economics and politics openly intertwine. Western analysts eagerly predict these coalitions won't last. Yes, Iran needs investments, China craves markets, Russia demands stable export routes, and North Korea seeks basic security guarantees. Their interests diverge. But strangely, none of this stops them from sitting down at the same table, sharing a stage, and challenging the established global order. What happens when forced alliances become strategic partnerships? And how far can this fragile unity stretch before it breaks? The world watches as old rivalries simmer beneath a new, uneasy camaraderie. Could this be the dawn of a reshaped global balance, or just a temporary blip before the inevitable fallout? The stage is set, but the script remains unwritten. In an unexpectedly chaotic twist of global relations, we find a world where the louder the calls for collective security ring in the West, the more contracts are being signed quietly in the East. The culmination of this geopolitical drama unfolds as Europe grapples with rising energy bills, struggling industries, and a burgeoning partnership between China and Russia that benefits from discounts on resources and access to advanced technologies. China is openly courting collaboration in high-tech industries. In Tianjin, discussions flourish around joint projects in electronics, IT, and pharmaceuticals. Meanwhile, Russia stands ready, not only offering its abundant resources but also establishing production sites for localized manufacturing. Can you imagine the buzz surrounding this new alliance amid global uncertainty? As the demand for reliable and cutting-edge technology surges, Russia's defense sector finds itself buoyed by guaranteed contracts that promise to sustain industry and foster growth. Yet, in stark contrast, the well-known leader of a certain country continues to echo demands for fresh sanctions and endless streams of aid. Europe, in compliance, allocates billions while simultaneously slashing its own social programs. Picture this: in Germany, retirees are scavenging for bottles just to make ends meet. The European Commission, meanwhile, shamelessly admits to dipping into unexpected gains from frozen Russian assets. Ursula von der Leyen, during her speech in Estonia, boldly states that €3.7 billion have been channeled to where it belongs. Complete with a theatrical closing remark about predators paying their dues. How hollow does the rhetoric of law and order sound in such a context? Amid these contradictions, real change is brewing. Europe dreams of isolating Moscow, yet it inadvertently nudges Russia closer to Asian markets. The US flexes its muscle with threats of trade wars against China, inadvertently hastening Beijing's integration with Russian technologies. And what of India? Despite external pressure, it continues to procure Russian resources, enjoying substantial discounts while simultaneously boosting its own industrial processing capabilities. We are witnessing the birth of a new economic framework right before our eyes, a system where the dollar is losing its status as the unchallenged intermediary. Will the West adapt to this shifting landscape, or will it cling to its outdated models? As the world holds its breath, one must ask, what could be the ultimate consequence of such a profound transformation? With every twist, each moment in this geopolitical landscape carries the tension of impending change, marking a departure from the established norms. Just like an unexpected plot in a gripping narrative, the real implications of this shift could be both breathtaking and alarming. Will the foundations of global finance withstand the changes on the horizon? That question lingers, echoing like a distant thunderstorm that threatens to disrupt the status quo. In a world where declarations of collective security ring louder than ever, contracts are quietly being signed in the East, bypassing Western powers. Meanwhile, escalating energy costs and dwindling markets plague Europe, while China reaps discounts and gains access to invaluable Russian technology. Every utterance from Washington about uniting against what they deem aggression seems to fall flat. As lofty rhetoric fills the air, palpable partnerships grow stronger between countries eager to innovate without Western oversight. In Tianjin, discussions of high technologies gain traction, revealing China's eagerness to embark on joint ventures in electronics, IT, and pharmaceuticals. Russia offers not just resources but also locales for production localization. Their defense sector, witnessing a surge in demand for modern and reliable equipment amidst global instability, finds assured contracts and fruitful collaborations. This newfound vigor stands in stark contrast to the ongoing calls for tighter sanctions and more aid from the West, particularly from the US, whose policies appear to backfire. While Europe allocates billions to punitive measures, its own social programs suffer. In Germany, the elderly collect bottles to stretch their pensions. Ironically, the European Commission admits to channeling unexpected profits from frozen Russian assets. Ursula von der Leyen, with audacious pride, declared funds worth €3.7 billion directed toward unspecified goals, invoking the metaphor of a predator needing to pay. Such statements render any pretense of legal superiority laughable, serving only to highlight the absurdity of the ongoing geopolitical drama. These contradictions foster developments that contradict the West's aspirations. Instead of isolating Moscow, it forces Russia into the welcoming arms of Asian markets. As the US threatens trade wars, China is swiftly integrating Russian technologies, and India continues purchasing Russian resources at favorable rates while expanding its industry through processing. Before our eyes, an alternative system is emerging where the dollar no longer reigns as the singular intermediary, dramatically reshaping international financial relations. But how sustainable is this new alignment? What unforeseen consequences await as powers once deemed oppositional come together? As we peel back the layers of this unfolding narrative, prepare to explore the twists and turns of a landscape that may redefine global alliances forever. In a surprising turn of events, Vladimir Putin returns from Alaska wielding immense diplomatic weight after striking a groundbreaking agreement with Donald Trump. The unexpected meeting has realigned global alliances, making even the most established powers reconsider their positions. Can anyone really grasp the magnitude of this shift, where a controversial US leader inadvertently becomes a unifying force for Russia and China? Let's delve deeper into the tides of international relations, where the roles are flipping loudly. The world is buzzing. After 7 long years, India has dispatched a significant delegation to China, akin to a monumental state visit. Whispers of a new era echo through the halls. Will traditional powerhouses succeed in holding their ground as nations pivot towards each other? The air crackles with anticipation as President Xi Jinping declares a unifying call among Russia, China, and India to resist external pressures. With Putin in Beijing, the image of a beleaguered leader crumbling under sanctions dissipates. He stands confidently, a stark contrast to past narratives. This absence of American leaders at such a critical summit transforms the arena. Could it signal the West's waning influence in global matters? As American media reflects on this unexpected loss of footing, the implications of a new cooperative bloc emerge. India's outspoken support for Russian-Chinese energy projects raises eyebrows. Trade flows between Russia and China have skyrocketed nearly 30% this year, shattering predictions of economic isolation. Ironically, the heavyweight sanctions meant to cripple Russia have stirred a robust surge in alternative alliances instead. As the world races toward a new alignment of power, ambitions intertwine across cultural barriers. Putin's extended stay in Beijing suggests intentions far deeper than mere camaraderie. Together with Xi, he gears up for a large-scale celebration of World War II's conclusion, an event underlining history while casting a substantial shadow on the future. A future emboldened to challenge established power structures. But here comes the unexpected twist. Russia's economy has silently blossomed, with a 3.6% increase in GDP in the face of sanctions. This revelation sends shockwaves through financial markets. What are the implications of this resilience? Are Western leaders ready to confront the reality of a world where their influence is steadily dwindling? The summit outcomes leave lingering questions. Can the old alliances weather the burgeoning strength emanating from Asia? Each handshake points toward a reconfiguration of global governance, shaking the foundations of long-standing assumptions. For all their efforts to maintain dominance, are Western powers inadvertently propelling nations closer together? As leaders exchange promises and new pathways, the stage is set for an unprecedented evolution in global affairs. The stakes are high, and the future is uncertain yet rife with possibilities. Who will rise to the occasion in this complex game of geopolitics? The real showdown has just begun. As we enter the captivating scene set at the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, a narrative of power and diplomacy unfolds. The simultaneous hosting of both a grand parade and an influential summit transcends mere ceremony. It serves as a meticulously planned media spectacle. The whirring of cameras, the striking columns, and the rhythmic beat of ceremonial rituals create an ambience brimming with authority. This event resonates with both domestic and international audiences in profound ways. For China, the summit is a defining moment, a chance to position itself as the epicenter of a new world order, while Russia seizes the opportunity to emphasize that claims of its isolation are purely theoretical. In this fertile political landscape, Iran boldly asserts itself as a key player, while North Korea, shadowed by its controversial past, seeks to bask in the limelight alongside established global figures. Despite Washington and Brussels casting disparaging remarks about the so-called axis of autocracy, the reality is unmistakable: these alternative alliances are gaining serious momentum. Beneath the polished rhetoric of values and freedoms lies an underlying motive: sustaining conflict as a pretext for increased military funding and suppressing domestic unrest. The NATO alliance, struggling for relevance, grapples with justifying rising defense budgets and deteriorating conditions at home without a compelling rationale beyond conjured Eastern threats. Meanwhile, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and BRICS are poised to flourish on this very contrast. At this summit, a candid dialogue emerges around the previously taboo topic of de-dollarization. Russia, China, and India are not just broaching this issue as a side note, they are firmly establishing it as a broad strategic initiative across Eurasia. President Putin, in a recent interview, spoke with unified conviction about the need to reform the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, advocating for principles of fairness and transparency. His words hinted at a seismic shift: the financial system should no longer operate as instruments of neocolonial influence. In a stunning development, the dollar's share of mutual trade has plummeted by over 50% in the last 2 years, with transactions in yuan and rupees taking a firm hold. Why is this significant in an era marked by eroding trust? The implications of this shift are monumental, heralding the birth of a new world order that could redefine international relations. Herein lies the unexpected twist: can the West genuinely counter this rise of powers, or is it trapped in a narrative of its own creation, slipping away from an era it once dominated? This dramatic split in perspective is crucial as the Eastern voices grow bolder. The illustrious stage in Beijing, adorned with the faces of powerful leaders, signals a moment of reckoning. What actions will the West take as these nations forge alliances that could reshape global dynamics? Will the strategies designed to isolate Moscow merely fortify the connections among these emerging powers, or can the West concoct a responsive strategy to counter this inevitable ascendancy? The road ahead promises a tapestry of tension and intrigue, ripe with unanswered questions that resonate well beyond the grandeur of summit scenes. Will the newfound alliances among Russia, China, and India redefine what we know about global economics, paving the way for a future that could challenge the established order? The stakes have never been higher, and the world watches with bated breath as this drama unfolds. In a world filled with escalating tensions, an unexpected chapter unfolds. At the summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, a stunning twist takes place. Vladimir Putin returns from a triumphant visit to Alaska where he forged an unexpected alliance with Donald Trump. In a matter of weeks, Trump has dramatically severed relations with two of the largest BRICS nations, India and Brazil, a feat no leader has achieved in years. How did it come to this? Tariffs have sparked conflict with India, while agricultural subsidies breed discontent with Brazil. The diplomatic chessboard is shifting, and as India dispatches its highest-level delegation to China in 7 years, Putin finds himself basking in an apparent victory. Amidst the backdrop of clinking glasses and whispered conversations, Xi Jinping emphasizes the critical need for unity among Russia, China, and India in defiance of external pressures. Gone are the days when Putin appeared cornered by sanctions. He now meets with Trump as an equal. The hushed tension in the room hints at a transformation, as Trump's public hesitance regarding new sanctions further changes the dynamics of power. Imagine the intensity of their exchange as shadows loom over the fragile peace. Yet, the irony sharpens. The West's failing grip fosters an unexpected alliance, as Moscow and Beijing commit to crafting independent trade routes that evade traditional Western pathways. Visualize a network of railways snaking through Central Asia, the Arctic Sea route bustling with activity, slowly forming an alternative system that challenges European dominance. Every strategy the West employs to isolate Russia is ironically launching it into realms of opportunity. With Turkey, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Brazil now joining this unexpected coalition, we must ask, is the West unwittingly crafting a fresh global order? As President Xi heralds this pivotal moment, a stage is set for a challenging power play against the familiar status quo. Picture the cacophony of discussions as leaders advocate for collaboration against a backdrop of clashing politics, financial interests, and ideological battles. The atmosphere is thick with anticipation, and the winds of change swirl ominously. Can this coalition withstand the tides of economic protectionism sweeping from the West, or will it buckle under the weight of its aspirations? This nascent alliance stands on the brink of shaping future global relationships, raising the stakes for all involved. Can the dream of a united front flourish, or will it collapse when faced with adversity? The moment of truth is here, and the stakes have never been higher. In the heart of this storm, barriers that once impeded trade are being dismantled. Instead of isolation, Russia's trade geography expands, reaching Turkey, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Brazil. With every obstacle the West erects, Russia finds a launching pad to alternative markets, thrusting forward in ways unimaginable. Emerging trade corridors, like the Northern Sea Route and various railways weaving through Central Asia, signal the dawn of a new global logistics framework. A system that diminishes dependence on Brussels and Washington is on the horizon. Could the West have miscalculated? Are they inadvertently propelling Russia, an economic pariah in their eyes, into the arms of new partners? As alliances morph, the cadence of change reverberates across continents. These moves promise a future where global trade dynamics are not just rewritten, but completely transformed. The intricate dance of geopolitical strategies reveals both opportunities and threats. Is this the birth of a new economic powerhouse defying an old order, or is it merely a fragile façade, ready to be challenged? The answers seem fleeting, but the outcomes are set to be monumental. How will history judge these tumultuous shifts? Only time will tell.